Hey fly tyers, Darren here. Welcome back to another fly tying tutorial. Today we're going to be tying a dry emerger pattern. This is called the BWO Blue-Winged Olive Hackle Stacker, and this is a bit of a novel approach to tying a dry fly. So this pattern is most often attributed to Bob Quigley, California fly tyer angler, and his versions of the fly pattern are tied professionally by Umpqua and distributed into fly bins in shops around the nation. But it's also attributed to Jim Kramer, Ned Long, and Ian Motter, who actually wrote the book on tying flies the Paraloop way. And I'll put a link in the description for a copy to that book. It's a really interesting look at the history of this type of pattern. So one thing I really like about the fly is that it sits low in the surface film, and just because the way the hackle is distributed, it floats really well. And I like this better than tying like a traditional Catskills type dry fly. You can easily replace the components of this to create something if you want, like a ginger quill or an Adams type pattern, say. Don't forget to put a comment down below so I can enter you into the next draw. Let's take a look at the material list and get started. Alright, let's get a fresh hook in the vise. So today I'm going to be tying on a barbless Firehole 419, and this is a size 12. I tie this in my box down to about a number 16. And for thread I'm going to be using a 70 denier olive, and just because we're tying a blue-winged olive, we're going to use olive, and this is going to form the basis of our body as well. So we'll just start our thread a little ways back from the eye, and what I want to try and achieve here is just to create a little bit of a tapered body. So I'll start at the front and try and work in a bit of a taper as I go along. So for the hackle on this, we're going to be using a blue dun, and I'm using a dry fly cape. So because I'm tying on a size 12 hook, I'm going to take a hackle that's sized somewhere around number 12. And so we're looking at a hackle that's about 1.5 times the width of the gape here. This one looks pretty good, so I'll just trim off the back end, and I'm going to take a few of the fibers from near the base. I want to try and get them a little bit stiff. We'll just kind of line those up a little bit, and we'll pull those off all together. Make sure the tips are aligned. We'll tear them off together, and we'll measure that out about a hook shank length, give or take. We'll tie that in on top of the hook shank. And as you tie, keep in mind you want to still create that taper, so I don't mind leaving in those extra long bits. Just helps prevent a few extra thread wraps in there. If you like to prop that tail up, you can put a wrap underneath the hackles and then over top of them. These ones are splayed a little bit more than I would prefer, so just moisten those a little bit just to kind of tamp them down. Alright, and we'll continue building up a little bit of that taper in the thorax. If you use a little bit of a thicker thread, it might be a little bit easier to do this step, but as you can see, we got a little bit of a taper, nothing too dramatic. Next I'm going to take a pearl dyed Chartreuse piece of Flashabou or flash material. I'm just going to take a single strand and we're going to tie that in along the side of the hook shank. down to the base of the tail. I'm just going to cover up those wraps as we head back. So as you can see, that taper kind of ends around the midpoint of the hook shank, just a hair forward of the midpoint, I suppose. So now we're going to wrap that pearl flash, and I don't exactly cover the entirety, and I guess this is more of a ribbing rather than a covering for that. But the Chartreuse, it allows a little bit of that olive color shining in from below, so it gives you that dark olive color. But with the pearl, it kind of gives out a bit of a look of trapped gas and kind of lightens up the pattern. But having a little bit of space in there gives you some segmentation at the same time. We're going to fortify this by using a little bit of bone dry. If you don't have the bone dry, you can use just a coating of something like Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails, or just any kind of head cement will do. And I like to do this just to kind of, it brings out the shine and darkens the thread wrap, so you can kind of see what you're getting when you get this on the water. So we'll go ahead and zap that with our UV light. Alright, that looks pretty good. So off of here, we're going to take a little bit of monofilament or some tippet. I'm using some Thorax, only because it was the closest thing at hand. If I had something a little bit thinner, I would probably go with that, like a 6X or 7X tippet, or something with a fine diameter. So we're going to actually loop this material. I'm going to take the two cut ends and we'll tie those off at the bottom, and that'll leave us with a loop. So we'll go ahead and tie the two tag ends, and I like to leave enough material so that I can fold those back just to make sure that they're absolutely secured in there. You can trim off the ends if you have them, and then when you pull the monofilament up, you'll see you've got an open loop there, and that'll help you secure the material. So we've tied in a blue dun hackle, and I've tied that with the concave against the body. Somehow we missed filming that, but we'll get through that. So then I just kind of position the loop with my forefinger on my right hand, and then I just pass the hackle around the loop between my thumb and forefinger of each hand. Then you can kind of wrap up the hackle 6 or 7 wraps, and once you get to the proper length, you can start wrapping that hackle down. So this is a little bit tricky, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not too difficult. And then once you get to the bottom of the hackle, we're just going to release that loop, and everything should be secure there. We'll pull everything back, and then we'll just make sure that we don't have too much of the hackle buried there, and we'll just add a few wraps to secure everything. Fold that hackle tip back and make sure it's secured in place, and we'll wrap back to the base of the Paraloop, or the stacked hackle. Just trim away those excess fibers there. No worries, we'll just those will all get tied down as we finish the fly. Alright, now we're going to add a bit of a thorax to this body. So you can see I've got a lot of different choices of olive dubbings, and this is an ice dub or diamond dub that I'm going to be using here. We're going to take an olive dubbing, which I find complements this blue-winged olive, and we're just going to take a small amount and we'll dub a fine noodle onto the thread. Just make sure we push that up. So I have probably about a 3 to 4 inch noodle there, and we'll just tie that in and create a bit of a thorax back to where we tied in the wing, and then we'll take that up to the eye. I'm just going to add a half hitch just so that that thread doesn't slip off. So now you can grasp the loop, and you want to pull back all of the hackle fibers, and then we're going to pull the loop over, and we'll tie it in right at the base of where the hackle stops. And the finer the diameter of monofilament or tippet you use, the easier this will be just to tie it off, and will allow you to create a nice tapered head. So I'm just going to put a half hitch in there just to keep it secure while I trim up the monofilament. And actually, let's just cut that off. So we'll pull that monofilament forward, and we'll clip that off as close to the wing base as we can. You can kind of see how the hackle kind of sits up on top, and so when you cast that thorax and the abdomen, they're going to sit in the film of the water, and that wing's going to just keep that fly suspended in the film. It's an excellent fly. I hope you try a few, change it up, see what happens. Hey fly tyers, thanks for stopping by and checking out my fly tying videos. If you enjoyed the video and want to show your support, hit the thumbs up and share it to your social networks. I hope you consider subscribing to the channel, and if you do, be sure to hit the bell icon to get notifications on my latest fly patterns, tips, and reviews. If you have a question or comment, leave a message below. You'll also be entered into the next draw for some of the flies I tie and a few stickers. Until next time, this is Darren saying, keep a hook in your vise. Cheers.